Thank you. Members, I can confirm that we're live. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting of the Employment Committee. I would remind everyone that the meeting is being recorded to be uploaded to YouTube. We move swiftly on to the first item on the agenda, which is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
We have apologies from Councillor Pickering.
Thank you. I note that Councillor Thompson is online. I would remind those online that they may not be able to vote. Only those present in the chamber are able to vote. There's no one else online, is there?
No.
Thank you. The second item of the agenda is declarations of interest. Does anyone have a pecuniary or an affected interest that they would like to declare? Now, as always, I'd remind you that if you become aware of such an interest, please do declare it at any opportune time during the meeting. The next item on the agenda is minutes from the last meeting, and in fact we're approving the last two meetings, as the meeting on October was online and therefore could not approve them. So I would ask first on the matter of July 11th, do we have any questions or comments, points of accuracy? No. On October 9th, any comments, questions or points of accuracy? No. In that case, I'm happy to propose them both as an accurate record. Do I have a second?
Councillor Allen, happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Allen. And I would ask for a show of hands, all those in approval of the minutes. That is indeed unanimous. Thank you very much. We then move on to the next item, which is urgent items of business. Have we been notified of any?
None received, Chairman.
Thank you. Then we go on to update from the Chair of the Local Joint Committee on the meeting that was just held. I acted as Chair in Councillor Pickering's absence. I can say that it is always great proof of the great working relationship that we as a council have with the trade unions in coming up with policies that work for everyone. The documents that we will see before us received approval from the trade unions present. Ideas were suggested for further refinement for the future, and we will take those into account as the policies continue to evolve in the months and years to come. So I would like to thank them for their involvement and attendance at all stages. We then, Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chairman. Can I just echo your sentiments? Having previously had the pleasure of chairing the Employment Committee, I don't think we can underestimate how important to our residents, but also the functioning of the council, is the relationship we have with the trades unions. We can see in other local authorities where those relationships break down. I think it's a testament to the work of the members of the council and the officers that we have such a good working relationship with the trades unions, and of course that's always for the betterment of our residents anyway, so thank you.
Very well said, Councillor McLean, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the minutes of the Local Joint Committee from October 9th. This is just simply to note, but obviously if anyone would like to raise any queries. Now, in that case, it is noted, and we move on to the main business of the meeting, starting first with the HR policy review. To be clear, we're looking at 5 subsets here. We're looking at bullying and harassment, equality and dignity, grievance, stress awareness, and time off in lieu. And I would invite Paul Young to introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As with previous meetings, the committee has had a number of HR policies to review and to agree. We have got, as been indicated, 5 policies for your consideration this evening. Rather than me going through these, I wanted to give Alison Bezic, our head of HR, the opportunity to attend Employment Committee and present these policies and respond to any questions you may well have. So over to you, Alison.
Thank you, Paul. So, yeah, as has been said, there are 5 policies that we're bringing today. This is part of a regular review the HR team undertake of all our policies in consultation with DMTs, CMTs and trade unions throughout that process, and the equality group as well. When we're reviewing our policies, we we do them regularly, as I said. We're putting a particular emphasis at the moment on reviewing for accessibility, where flowcharts are included in policies, such as grievance policy. We're putting narrative around that and have added an extra appendices for that to help people who have rely on software to talk them through processes which flowcharts don't interact with, and obviously with legislation as well. The time off in lieu and additional payments guidance was last reviewed in 2019. This became subject to review following the FlexiTime scheme, which was brought to the Employment Committee in July this year. And we've moved it to a new template, included the Bracknell Forest Equality Statement, and recognised that maybe local service-specific arrangements in place. The stress awareness policy, this has been renamed from the stress at work policy in recognition of the fact that stress isn't necessarily just based at work, and also an emphasis on awareness, what managers can do to identify stress. So it's, you know, trying to change that emphasis to prevention, and we've included reference to wellness action plans and stress risk assessments to give them more of a focus, and they are tools that we rely on quite heavily in HR to support people who are absent due to stress. The equality and dignity at work policy, this was last reviewed in October 21. We've moved it to a new template and added public sector equality duty on that policy. Moving ahead to the grievance policy, this was last reviewed in February 23, but from using these policies, we identify improvements, which is really what's happened with this policy. So we've introduced a thorough review of information when moving to stage 2, and just as added more information and emphasis on that, and included some key links and linking through to the equality and dignity at work policy. And then finally, the bullying and harassment policy. Now, this is a new policy. While there's reference within the equality and dignity at work policy to bullying and harassment, due to changes in legislation, which is putting more of an emphasis on third-party harassment and the responsibility of the employer, we have created a new policy to actually provide sufficient detail around this area. It's something that is still under review in terms of the next steps, and we'll be looking at risk assessments where there is a risk of third-party harassment to protect the council from that. So, yeah, thank you, Chair. That's a summary of all our policies. I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, and a very succinct summary it was. Indeed, I open up to questions or comments. Councillor Allen.
As I pointed out the local joint, I'll point it out here. So the subject of the paragraph 2, which is the equality paragraph, came up, and I noticed that the third paragraph of section 2 differs between the I think bullying and equality have one paragraph 3, and then the grievance, stress and time off have a different paragraph. So I just thought I'd mention that in passing, but I believe you're going to review that that whole section anyway.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Allen. That was noted from earlier. So, yeah, we'll be carrying out a full review. Thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you, Chairman. So much of this is impacted by the culture of an organisation, and as we've seen with recent events with the BBC, it's good to have a policy and it's good to review the policy, but actually the most important thing perhaps about having such policies is for people who work in an organisation to make it perfectly clear what is acceptable and what is not acceptable behaviour. And I think the culture of Bracknell Forest is one that where our members of staff collectively should not be concerned about calling out bad behaviour and making sure it's perfectly clear that it is not acceptable. Now, where the BBC clearly went wrong with a certain individual is that he was allowed to conduct himself in a way that wasn't challenged. Clearly, that level of challenge needs to go alongside the policies we have in place. So are you confident that we have such a robust process in place for people to challenge and call out behaviour that's inappropriate? And if we need to improve or refine that, what are we doing to do so?
Thank you. We have our policies around bullying and harassment and equality and dignity. They're well circulated to our workforce. So subject to approved by Employment Committee, we have a comms plan to promote these policies. As part of those comms, we will pick up encouragement of people who feel that uncomfortable in situations to report them. I think we have a good track record of responding positively when people do raise complaints and grievances. So I am confident we have sufficient processes in place. I would say that people feel listened to, which I think is really key. We are putting together, there's guidance for managers to how to respond as well when somebody is the victim of bullying, harassment, whether it's from a third party or not, so that there is a clear process to follow and direction of where they can get support. So, thank you.
Thank you. That's good to hear, because having listened to, it's not quite the same, but having listened to somebody speak about their experience of domestic abuse, one of the key aspects of that is the victim or other people who've witnessed such behaviour, knowing that there is someone who's going to listen to them. So I think that's really very important, and I'm pleased to hear what you've said. My second question is about stress. Clearly, stress is a significant issue for many people, but post the pandemic, I also feel that with hybrid working becoming much more of a norm, the stress that places on line managers to manage people who are working remotely can also become an issue. Are we happy that the resources and the support is available to line managers who are reporting who are overseeing hybrid workers is there? Because I've seen it myself where more senior people have to invest more time in doing their job to accommodate people who are working flexibly.
Okay. We haven't had that highlighted as a particular issue. That's not to say it doesn't exist. Are you referencing just people actually working hybrid in a hybrid manner, that the managers aren't aware of their stress, or the stress that is caused from actually working remotely?
No. To clarify, I've seen firsthand where a senior person has had to work longer hours to adjust for the flexible working of people that report to them. So, for example, if you're a senior manager and you have staff who work 9-day fortnights, or who work longer hours but don't work on Fridays, I've seen examples of that senior manager having to work longer hours to take account of other members of staff who work in a hybrid way to make sure the work is done. So I recognise that a lot of staff can suffer from stress and do suffer from stress, but I don't think we can overlook the fact that hybrid working may have unintended consequences of more senior people having to have more stressful working arrangements to make everything work holistically.
Thank you for that comment. I think we are doing some work with our senior leadership team on wellbeing, and part of the wellbeing is clearly in terms of their leadership and line management in a more agile working environment. And we've got some sessions planned early in the new year in January with the senior leadership group. The some of these points are we do clearly have regular dialogue with the managers through the managers forum, and part of the programme that Antoinette will come on to later in terms of employee wellbeing will always have a focus on the leaders, because as you rightly say, there are different challenges on leaders with agile working, and it's something which whilst we cover under the overall wellbeing, employee wellbeing, we do extra work with our managers forum, and through further discussions with the corporate management team and the chief executive, we've been particularly asked to be doing some work early in the new year with the challenges of agile working, but also in terms of the challenges of budgets at the moment. It brings extra challenges on all of our senior leaders and managers throughout the organisation, and what we want to do is make sure that whilst there is always going to be pressure, that all of our managers feel as supported as they can be. So we will go through this, and it's one of the things that we always monitor in terms of sort of challenges, clearly in terms of one-to-one supervisions, and through the discussions that we have at the departmental management teams. And it has always been a strong focus in terms of employee wellbeing, and certainly through each departmental management team, that is something that's regularly commented on and reviewed.
Thank you, Paul Allison. Councillor Allen, have you got some question?
Yes, I noticed in the end of these policies you have a number of e-learning resources. Do we have I don't know whether we have a regime whereby employees need to go through certain courses on a triannual or biannual basis to keep themselves up to date? Do we have that sort of policy? I know, for example, the company I work for, I get an email every couple of years saying you need to do this course, and this course, and it comes around every couple of years. Do we have that for things like bullying and discrimination and stuff like that, equality?
We haven't got that regimented at the moment. There are certain leadership development arrangements that are part of a regular programme. I think the question related to the new policy for the harassment and bullying, if you note on the covering report on 5.9, it does talk about because this is a new policy, because of the profile of this policy, we will be doing extra support for our leadership and management and that development programme. And what we're also incorporating it into the management induction sessions that we do, where there are areas that we feel need to be reintroduced through the learning and development programme, we will make it compulsory through the organisation. And there's been a number of examples of that where there's been particular issues. It isn't something that we have a regular programme for everyone to do it every 2-3 years or so. But if there was any particular issue that had been identified, then that's something we would introduce.
Just to follow up on that, I find it actually quite useful to do these courses as a refresher, because as Councillor McLean was saying, do people report this stuff? It reminds people that in a conversation, if they hear something inappropriate, for example, it refreshes what they can and cannot do, and I find that quite, I think it can be quite useful to the whole workforce.
Okay, thank you. That's noted. Thank you.
Any other questions? No. Oh, Paul.
Can I just make a comment? I'm really grateful for the comment you were making earlier on about the relationship with the trade unions, and if I may, Chair, if I can feed that back to the trade unions, because I know they put a lot of effort and we put a lot of ask on our trade union colleagues to spend time with us to go through certain activities. So if that's okay through the Chair, if I can, on behalf of the Employment Committee, go back and just show our gratitude in terms of that relationship and the support and the time that they provide for Bracknell Forest Council, that would be really, I'd be grateful to be able to take that through.
I have not a doubt that is the unanimous view of the board. That is the feeling of all of us. So we would love you to convey that. Thank you. Paul Allison, thank you again. If there are no more questions, I therefore propose the recommendations on 2.1, or should I say at 2.1 and 2.2 of the report. Do I have a second?
Councillor Allen, seconded, Chair.
Thank you. I will just simply start off by saying that I went through, let's take an example, the bullying and harassment policy line by line, and it's rare for me to not then necessarily besiege someone with lots of questions and comments. In fact, I think my comments were purely about stylistic and grammatical things. So the fact that I'd gone through that exercise and didn't find anything I thought was lacking, I think is a testament to the work that the officers have put into creating this report. So really, my appreciation. I think that says all it needs to be said. Councillor Annan, would you like to add anything?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Okay, in that case then I'd like to ask if any other members would speak. No, in that case I have nothing further to add. I will ask for a vote. All those in favour of recommendations 2.1 and 2.2?
Yep, unanimous.
That is unanimous. Thank you very much, everyone. We then move on to the next item, which is the pay award report. And again, I hand the floor over to Paul.
Thank you, Chair. As the committee will know, over the last few meetings I've provided an update with the position of the National Pay Award, which was due back in April. There was the potential, I think at the last meeting we talked about the potential for industrial action in Bracknell Forest and beyond. Shortly after the ballots had closed for the industrial action, we had the confirmation that the responses in Bracknell Forest would relate to no strike action in Bracknell Forest. But as the committee will recall, then there was a potential for the pay award and for industrial action to be in other areas, so that could delay the implementation of this pay award. But very shortly afterwards, there seemed to be an agreement struck between the trade unions and the national employers, and agreement for that pay award based on the offer was actually confirmed. So we were pleased to be in a position that we have now implemented the pay award. I mentioned this has been quite a long time coming. As in previous years, it has taken quite a long time, and it's been around about the autumn time before the pay award has agreed and backdated to April. Whilst there was clearly an understanding and a push to try and get this achieved early as possible, it's interesting to note that we've had a number of positive comments back from employees saying that they're grateful to have the pay award and the back pay just in their November pay just shortly before Christmas time. So whilst we were trying to push to get this through as the earliest opportunity to get it into people's pay packets at the earliest opportunity, the fact it has come in November has been what would appear to be universally well received. So the report is effectively just to go and confirm that the negotiations and the 2024-25 pay negotiations have been concluded and have all been implemented. I'm happy to take any further questions on that, but we'll wait to see what happens in 2025.
Thank you, Paul. I open up to any questions. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chairman. Presumably, one benefit to employees to have that pay and the pay award reflecting their November pay packets is because we took the decision some years ago to push the December payday back to the end of the month. So by virtue of you being able to do that, that means that they'll have the money before Christmas rather than after Christmas.
Exactly that, and that's where a lot of the positive comments have come through. So it has been well received, and I can remember the times when we did get the early pay before Christmas time, and it was a long wait until January. So we're very much in the situation where the position as it stands now is I think is the right and proper one for the council.
Excellent. Any other questions? No, then this is just to note, but I imagine I speak for the entire board when I say that we're glad that this is resolved and that we can move on. So that is good to hear. The next item on the agenda is the Employee Wellbeing Report, and guess what? The floor is yours again, Paul.
Very kind, thank you very much. Actually, I am going to be passing over to Antoinette Akaku, sorry, Antoinette. Antoinette is our head of organisational development. We wanted to bring a report to Employment Committee on the back of comments that we previously had in terms of what we are doing to support our staff and our staff wellbeing. And some of the comments and questions that we've had today clearly identifies where the Employment Committee are at in ensuring that we are providing support for our staff. So Antoinette will be here just to give an overview in terms of some of the activities that we're doing to support the wellbeing of our staff. So over to you, Antoinette.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you. So we are currently, health and well-being is critical to the organisation and supporting our workforce and creating a culture where staff do feel safe feel safe and supported. The well-being offer that we currently offer, we have a wide range of, and we are developing a wide range of initiatives. Most notably over the last year, and just exactly a year ago, we appointed through a volunteer scheme Wellbeing Champions, where we got 38 champions available who are all also mental health first aider certified by the Mental Health First England. So they are supporting that. Half of that group, 38, over half of them are actually also equality allies, which we have a cohort of 30 staff across the organisation to support staff. They're there to listen, signpost to the right resources if required, and provide a safe and confidential arena for staff to feel supported by. So that's one of the initiatives that is really, really positive, and staff have been using the offer that we're currently providing. We're also currently developing a wellbeing toolkit that will look at reasonable adjustments, and it will support some of the policies that we are developing. So that wellbeing toolkit will support staff and managers in providing a clearer way of providing guidance in providing reasonable adjustments to staff when including new starters and current staff that we have. We have a very strong and one of our earlier staff network groups, which is the menopause group. That group also is very much, we have members from across the organization, male and female, because it's inclusive, where managers, people do come in and support. I'm included in that network, where we do provide guidance, external support, signposting, etc., etc. We currently developed, and it's over a couple of months now, a disability and neurodiversity staff forum, and that's really, really taken off to support staff going for with issues that they may again providing a safe space for them, so that they can support staff and raise, issues that we can then take back to HR for development. So that's currently what we're doing around the well-being space. What I would like you to note is that overall in the pack, sickness absence, although that post-COVID, that has significantly reduced, one notably, which is good news, from 8 days overall per person to 6 days. There's still, we have noted stress, anxiety, and depression, and workforce pressure is also still high, one of the highest reasons for absence. So we are looking, to support the stress awareness policy. We're going to look further into supporting managers, and as Paul said, in the new year, we will be conducting discussion sessions with our senior managers through Managers Forum and the senior leadership team to support well-being. So those are the key things that we'd like to point out. We are doing a lot of work, again, further down. I'll go down to the next item when we come to discuss that, around the EDI toolkit, because obviously bullying and harassment, etc., does impact on well-being as well. So we have developed a toolkit, and we hope to launch that. Instead of it being a document, it will be on our manager hub intranet site for staff. Can easily access and see guidance, and to support councillors' comment about what are we doing to develop staff on a ongoing basis. This toolkit will, provide staff with the support that they need around whether it's discrimination, inclusive language, etc. It's very comprehensive. So, and it would be a live knowledge hub for staff to develop. We've currently got loads of a couple of EDI modules on our learning platform, so that people can access, and we'll continue to promote that through the learning and development team. So that's the offer at the moment. Any questions or any further additional measures that you think that might help support our action plan going forward?
It's nice. I was going to say questions, comments, or indeed additional measures to suggest. Councillor McLean.
Thank you, Chairman. Could you just expand on the role of mental health first aiders in terms of the training they receive and how they interact with members of staff?
Right, so the mental health first aid, the wellbeing champions are there to provide a listening ear. They're there to promote wellbeing activities within the organization, make sure that, wellbeing initiatives are embedded, and we have a culture of wellbeing on ground level. So they're there within the teams and services. Like I said, there's 38 of them across all the workforce structure to support staff. So they're there to support staff, signpost them to resources, internal and external, whether it may be through HR or occupational health or our VIVUP. We got an employee assistant program, that's it, VIVUP platform, so that they're very much, they've got extra knowledge about where the resources are, and they can signpost people to. So that's, the mental health first aiders, as I said, they're trained, certified by Mental Health First England, First Aid England. So the support is national. It's a recognised body. That's, they've gone through 16 hours, I believe, of training to support staff.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or suggested measures? Councillor Allen.
Yeah, so again, it was something I mentioned at the local joint committee about in the days lost, about 104 being stress, depression and anxiety. So this is on page, oh, I haven't got a page number, oh well. So yeah, 104 being stress, depression and anxiety, and 105 being work-related pressure. Now, work-related pressure days lost is about a little over 10% of the other stress, depression, anxiety, and I just wondered whether that seems, I would have thought actually work stress was actually probably higher than that. So I'm just wondering, because there's two categories, whether some people are just putting it in the stress bucket, and some people are saying it's actually a work thing, whereas both of them might be work related.
Yeah, we are looking at the categories for absence at the moment. As you can see, stress, depression and anxiety is quite a wide range. And so we're going to be looking at that again to actually identify that, so we can try and capture what is work-related stress. But that said, if any of our employees are stressed in any way and are absent from work or are struggling with their well-being, we want to know about it and we want to be providing that support. But in terms of the absence reasons, then we do constantly look at this to try and get a better understanding of actually what this really means. And the systems we've got now are a lot clearer in terms of individuals self-declaring this. And also managers have a role to play to make sure that we are putting the right category in for the absence. But it's something, I think, a little bit uncomfortable, the stress, depression and anxiety, and we've had that discussion around the teams, whether we can actually sort of drill that down a bit. Clearly it makes it more challenging to compare year-on-year data, but it's some activities that we're looking at to try and get a better understanding of really what the reasons for absence actually are. And can I just make another comment to do with the mental health first aiders? They are trained, and I think they've played a particularly effective role, because where individuals feel, for whatever reason, they can't go to their managers to talk about how they may well be struggling in the home environment or indeed within work, they have played a really important role to be that listening ear. And as Antoinette has indicated, they would then be in a position to be signposting to support through the organisation. We have got quite a lot of support available. This is an extra mechanism, so we're not just relying on the managers to be identifying and being that pillar of support. This is another opportunity to be speaking to another listening ear inside the organisation that can help support and signpost.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's a really valuable benefit to the staff to have that available. How is that working, though, in this new environment with remote working and hybrid working, in terms of making sure that people who aren't necessarily physically present in the office understand how they get access to those facilities and take advantage of them?
Right. So the mental health, we have a platform on our intranet where all the 38 mental well-being champions, that's why they just happen to be mental health first aid certified, well-being champions are listed, and they are available whether through Teams or face-to-face. So even if there's somebody having a crisis, and it has happened in Times Square or one of the other areas, they can have somebody available within the office to contact, or they can contact them online in a hybrid way. So it's not exclusive that they have to be in the office, as opposed to a physical first aider. They are available whenever during the working hours. So that's.
Yeah, I suppose my question is also how do the wellbeing champions interact with staff, rather than waiting for a member of staff to contact them because they are suffering from stress or other issues they would benefit from speaking to someone else about? Is there a proactive approach? So if a colleague notices that someone is in need of that level of support, is it a two-way flow?
I have to get used to that. It's definitely a two-way approach where staff are, colleagues are supposed to, the wellbeing champions are there to identify if somebody is struggling and approach them, or vice versa. They're there as a resource where managers can even signpost that if a manager recognizes something, they can recommend through their conversation whether they need mental health first aid support or wellbeing champion support. They're there to, we do regularly, we got a VivUp. Not VivUp. Viva Engage platform, which is Yammer platform, where Microsoft Viva Engage platform, where people can post questions, advertise resources. We just done a promotion around suicide last week. Mental health, Men's Health Day, week, month, last month as well. So we actively promote that. So people, regularly through our forest newsletters, etc., so that people are aware that this resource is available.
Yeah, all I would add is that our Leadership and Management Development Programme has very clear support and guidance for managers in leading in an agile environment as well, of which all our managers, and we have actually also put on particular training courses for our managers and psychological safety, and there are further activities planned in terms of ensuring that managers feel confident in managing in that agile environment, because whilst it's the norm now, what we want to do is ensure that people feel confident in managing in this norm sort of a situation. So the Leadership Management Development Programme has got that as a bedrock in terms of that's how we need to be supporting, and that's what we want a Bracknell Forest manager to look like, and that's a core competency.
Any other questions, comments? No, well, I will make a comment and a question. My comment is this. Local government has never had all the money it wants, and it's been particularly cash-strapped most of this century. We're asking staff to do more, quite often on less numbers, and I'd say a common theme to my questions when it comes to anything staffing is making sure officers are looked after when they are having to do much more on their own plates than they ever have before. So the fact that we have this report here dedicated to the question of employee well-being, I am personally very grateful for. Very, very grateful for. And I think the things contained within are a really encouraging step. I think it's a sign that this council does take very seriously the fact that whilst we are asking officers to do more with less, we are a supportive environment, we are an inclusive environment, and we're not just sitting still. We are doing our best to make things better. And what I would ask further to that is to make sure that this document is regularly reviewed in this committee, because I think it is vital that we have a chance to assess where we are and what more work can be done. My question is this. We focus on a lot of things, but I think generally, and I don't mean that, I don't refer to just Bracknell Forest Council, I talk about generally in this country, we don't focus enough on the question of ageism. Now, it shouldn't just be because numbers are increasing, but it is the fact that we will experience an ageing workforce as the years go on. And we all know it from our own personal experience that there can be people who think that just because you're older, you must not be capable of doing the job. Or if you're going through particular challenges, there's no real effort sometimes to ensure circumstances are changed, accommodated to meet those challenges. It's just simply made more difficult for them. And again, I'm not referring to this council. This council does an excellent job, but I think we can't rest on our laurels. And I would raise that. I would ask, what are we doing to tackle the problem of ageism to make ourselves a far more inclusive and resilient organisation on that front?
Yeah. From a council perspective, we seem to have the majority of our staff are aged 40 to 59, so we seem to have an ageing workforce. And actually we employ more people in that age group than compared to the census data that we have. But that said, we're very keen to retain people who are older and later in their careers. The HR retention and recruitment workstream has a permanency element of that, and as part of that we're looking at how we can retain people and use them to develop and train people who are more at the start of their careers. So we're keen to recruit people who are in the younger age demographic but also retain at the top end. So they might have been a social worker and they want to kind of step back from the day-to-day but be there to provide a developmental and more of like an academy approach to the people starting their careers. So.
Yeah, I think that last point's really important, because when we talked about implementing what is an academy model, I think that the view was that was going to be reflecting on just bringing a cohort of younger workers to the organisation. But what was clear through the discussions that we had with corporate management team and through colleagues in the council is that we do want to be retaining people that may well be coming to the end of their careers and looking at more flexible working arrangements that if they feel that they wanted to look at reducing hours and their time with the organisation, if we can continue to capture their skills and experience. So, as Alison's indicated, the retention and recruitment project work we've got is got a strong focus on this, and also looking at where people are through their own workforce plans and their own plans, looking at potential retirement. Then we're encouraging our managers to have conversations with them to see actually what else can you continue to provide for the organisation should you choose to do so. Clearly there will be others that want to go off to sunnier lands and do other things, but if there's the opportunity to retain people with those skills and experience, that's something that we are encouraging our managers to do, and for the actions that we're taking through the retention and recruitment work, that is high on the agenda.
Thank you. Certainly recruitment and retention is an important part of that, but it is also the culture involved. And of course, as you know, Paul, there are organisations that offer advice around how we improve the culture for older workers, and there are variable suggestions that they can make, things like an age inclusion champion, making sure age is specifically mentioned within EDI policies, making job adverts more appealing by not just referring to a specific age group like recent graduate possibly. So there are things like that. I'm not asking you to respond to that, but I suppose it's just the assurance that it's not just about recruitment and retention, it is about improving the culture as well.
Indeed, the work that Antoinette's leading on is all to do with employee culture and workforce culture, so that is evident. And what I would say is, and whilst you wouldn't want to be in a position to be looking at a case of discrimination for age, I can't think of any complaints that we've had or through grievance processes which has actually had any commentary on the fact is that people feel they've been discriminated for being in their older age limit within the council. So it's something that we can consider, because we are looking at various support groups and mechanisms to support all areas of our workforce. So that's something we can give further consideration to.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, comments or suggested policies, this report is simply to note. So we will then move on to the next item of the agenda, which is the Anti-Racist Charter, and I will ask Paul to start off.
I will start off briefly by saying I'll pass over to Antoinette again. So over to you, Antoinette.
Thank you, Paul. Right. The Anti-Racism Charter really is seeking to strengthen our commitment to equality and diversity and inclusion, and reinforcing our zero tolerance approach to discrimination and racism. So the adoption to consider the Unison Anti-Racism Charter is in line with our values and obligations under the Equality Act 2010, and into ensuring that we have an inclusive culture, not only internally, but with for the communities that we serve. This charter is actually very timely. We started work on it to consider it as a result of the employee experience survey that we conducted at the end of 2022-23, early 2023, which noted that employees from minority ethnic backgrounds are likely to view the council as being inclusive, less confident to manage unsafe and unethical practices, more likely to witness and experience discrimination, and less likely to believe that change is well managed. But that's something that they're just less likely to believe these things. So what we are trying to do is strengthen our approach to discrimination. This adoption of the Unison Charter really is, like you said before, is part of our approach in working in partnership with our Unison trade union members to make sure that this is an approach that we use to strengthen and enhance. It's not a replacement for all the work that we're currently doing, but it's to enhance and build upon our policies and our procedures and support that we give. Yeah, so basically it's really to make it more embedded within the culture. It's about demonstrating action rather than just a tick box exercise. This is not a tick box exercise approach. It's really to make sure that everybody is aware of their responsibilities, in creating an environment where we can speak up, where employees can speak up when there's issues, and provide that safe environment where everyone feels that they can belong and bring their best selves to work. So this charter is really a pledge and a commitment over a 12-month period to create an anti-racist organization, saying that it's not in isolation. Any benefits, any learnings that are taken from here will strengthen the other protected characteristics that we've got, whether disability, ageism, sexuality, etc. So it's to strengthen all of those areas as well, but with a focus on anti-racism at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Allen.
You say it's not a tick box exercise, but then we have 20 points with a tick box, a lot of which we do already. So I wondered, how many of these things are the things which you could say that we currently don't do?
Currently, we're in the process of doing a gap analysis assessment. So we're action planning and rating where we are on that. Mostly, we're partially on there, and some of them that we are doing, but we're not sitting down and we're actually trying to improve all of that. So it's about, some of it is about whether we have policies in place, making sure that impact assessments are being done, which we're doing, but we're trying to strengthen that and making sure that they're robust. And again, they're not left to the end of a service development, but they're actually considered at the beginning of the service development or policy development. And we're including in our impact assessment, for example, not only just equality, diversity, inclusion impact assessment, but considering climate change and health and well-being within that assessment process. So, like I said, we're currently doing the gap analysis on that, and once we've confirmed and identified what the gaps are, we'll bring it back here for your review.
Any other questions? Councillor McLean.
Thank you. One of the problems that many organisations face is actually making themselves an attractive organisation to join. What can we do as an employer, aside from clearly demonstrating we have an anti-racism policy, to encourage people from all different communities to recognise local government is an attractive career option, and one in which people can thrive during the course of their career? Because one of my concerns is that given the financial constraints local government faces and has faced for some time, that Councillor Gilby has referred to earlier, is we need to demonstrate to people of all ages and all backgrounds that local government can be a satisfying and rewarding career. But my concern is that as an organisation across the country, that may not be something that is appealing to people at the moment because of financial constraints. So what can we do that perhaps we're not already doing to encourage people from all backgrounds, all walks of life, that actually joining Bracknell Forest Council will be a fulfilling and rewarding career?
Yeah.
Sorry.
So you may have seen recently that there's been a South East Employers LGA funded campaign, regional campaign, Make a Difference, Make a Change, Work for Your Local Council. That ran through November. So we've used that as the launch pad. So our social media posts around recruitment follow that imagery and that message. That will be run again throughout January. So that's something we need to capitalise on. As part of the January campaign to link into that, we're going to be doing, and I haven't formalised all the wording around it yet, but, you know, encourage people to move from private sector into public sector. You know, make a change. Have you thought about a career in the public sector? These are the benefits you'll get. We've also we've been constantly reviewing our adverts and looking at the local offer and highlighting where Bracknell Forest in particular has better benefits than our neighbouring authorities, but also the private sector as well. So like with an emphasis on, you know, annual leave, support and wellbeing, being supported in the workplace, the local government pension scheme as well. So and just promotion through every source we can find. So which obviously costs us as little money as possible because obviously we're budget constraints, but using social media, we're constantly looking at our offer and where we can advertise. So coming up, we're looking at TikTok campaigns, videos to embed into adverts as well, to really give us that great breadth of recruitment activity and attract people from a wider, you know, from throughout the workforce. But also using some of the other initiatives. So we disability confident employer status that applies in our appears in all our adverts as well. So, yeah, thank you.
Well, clearly, from all of those things you've said, that's very encouraging. But embedded within it must be presumably, because an integral part of reaching different communities, an anti-racism policy, but also the other policies we've already touched on. So presumably they're forming a core part of that offering.
I'm going to ask Paul to come in on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the culture has been mentioned a number of times this evening, and we wouldn't underestimate the impact that has through the various forums we have. We do clearly managers forums, we do all staff briefing forums, and over the last 12 months or so, Antoinette has led some touch surveys within those sessions, which asks staff to come up with some really straightforward questions in terms of what it's like working in Bracknell Forest. And we don't want it sugar-coated. If there's issues or challenges, we want to hear about it. And I think what we've managed to do and get from that sort of information is some really key information to be able to sort of identify what it's like to be working here. And what we want to try to do is actually be as open as a culture as we possibly can, that people can identify where they're unhappy or where there's issues to do with the organisation. And certainly the feedback we're getting through those sort of activities, and indeed in certain areas where people have left the organisation and then come back to Bracknell Forest, and they've come back to Bracknell Forest on the basis of that they enjoyed the working culture here. So it's building up on some of those. It's using some of those examples in some of our literature to do with the recruitment, but also in the Forest Views and the information that we share internally with staff, so that they can really understand about actually it is a good place to be working. And if people don't feel that way, we want to understand why, and we're really open and would encourage that sort of feedback. Alison and team are also looking at, we've done a number of recruitment events, both in schools and in the lexicon, and we're looking to do more and more of those, about looking at opportunities to be working in local government and in Bracknell Forest. So that's something we are looking to develop, and we may well be sort of targeting certain areas so we can look at identifying some additional support for individuals in trying to get them to employ, to engage with us and to be looking at careers in local government.
Thank you. Any other questions? No, in that case then I will be moving the recommendations at 2.1. Do I have a second?
Councillor Allen, happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. I would just simply say that it is quite clear from previous conversations that I've had that the Unison Anti-Racism Charter is the gold standard, but that is not to say that it is anything is perfect. It is always up for review and evolution. But I think as a next step in this ongoing process, it is an important step. So I wholeheartedly endorse the recommendation to approve it. Councillor Annan, do you have anything to say?
Nothing to add, Chair.
Would any other member like to speak? No, I have nothing further to add. So I would ask those all in favour of approving 2.1 of the recommendation to raise their hands. That is unanimous, thank you. And just to add that 2.2, recommendation 2.2 is simply to note the ongoing commitments that the organisation will need to pledge within 12 months of signing. So we will review that, I'm sure, in due course. We then move on to the next item of the agenda, the final item of the agenda, which is the annual workforce monitoring report. And I dare say for the last time this evening, I hand the floor over to Paul.
Again, thank you, Chair. And I'm going to be handing over to Antoinette shortly, but I would just remind the committee, this is as stated, the annual workforce quality monitoring report. And this is a report whilst is a requirement for us to publish and to publish on our on the Bracknell Forest internet. There's an awful lot of information here, and there's further information that we have provided through the corporate management team, and we will subsequently be working through each departmental management team to really understand some of this data and what this is telling us, and action plans, if necessary, will be resulting from that. But I'll pass you over to Antoinette. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Again, like Paul said, this is quite an extensive report. It's very detailed. The main thing to note is that we are striving to make sure that we're an employer of choice. So the key things are that we're developing part of that. For example, we are developing a manager behavior framework to support that. It is noticed that most employees tend to leave their managers, not the organization themselves. So we're trying to make sure that managers are supporting, we have role modeling and supporting our workforce going forward. We addressed the things, some of the topics around ageism, the equality, around equality and disability going forward. It's good to note that our gender pay gap reporting is also gender pay gap is narrowing. Unlike we're also conducting, although it's not a legal requirement, equality, ethnicity pay gap reporting, and we're also doing that, and that's also narrowing over the last 4 or 5 years since we started recording it in 2020. So that is a positive note. Is there any questions, having read the report, any specific questions you would like to address? Please, thank you.
Councillor McLean.
Thank you. I think one of and thank you for preparing the report, which is very informative and very useful, and I think is good to be published. But of course, one of the problems we have is that Bracknell Forest Council is a very small organisation, and particularly when you're looking at the numbers in relation to senior members of staff and the proportions of them that fall into different categories, a small change can make a significant difference to the outturn. But clearly, there's a positive story to be told, certainly in relation to that, which is encouraging. But clearly, I think, is it fair to say two things: that those small changes can have a significant impact on the annual report, but also some of the data relies on self-certification, which can also prove to be problematic in getting, I hesitate to say reliable data, but data that is comprehensively accurate.
Yes, we do rely on self-declaration, like all data, and we're actually we're conducting initiatives to find out what are the barriers and then ask questions either through exit interviews. We're doing an exit interview review at the moment, to identify reasons of leaving, for example, to address that, and also through for example, within the disability around, which is the highest, non-disclosure, trying to find out what is the barrier to non-disclosure. That is national, it's not peculiar to Bracknell Forest. Really, generally people, some people don't identify as being disabled or being labeled, want to be labeled as being disabled, so that's one of the barriers. We are encouraging self-disclosure, so last year we had around 45, nearly 46% non-disclosure through a current exercise that we will again conduct next month is to encourage disclosure, and that has narrowed to 42%, which is it's a small movement, but it's a movement comparatively. And again, through the Staff Disability Forum, the newly formed Staff Disability and Neurodiversity Forum, we are encouraging having those conversations and make it easier to speak up or easier to have the conversation. So it's really about us being transparent about what we use the data for, and we're currently doing that and making sure through DMTs and managers to encourage disclosure, encourage staff to disclose, and also the forums is there. We can't address, as an employer, we have a duty of care, and we can't really support them effectively if we don't have insights of the numbers and the reason, what kind of disabilities people or long-term conditions that people have. So really, we're just trying to make it normalize the conversation and make it and establish that strong management and employee relationship so that people can disclose, and then we can then effectively direct support into the area. So we're looking at not only just the reasons of absence, for instance, but the different categories of disability, because at the moment we just capture whether you're disabled or have a long term. So we're going to look at exploring the type of disability or condition that people may have.
Any other questions? I have a couple. In the introduction, I quote from the Employee Experience 22-23 survey. The introduction summarises that over the past few years we have seen an increasing number of colleagues feeling in some way discriminated against whilst at work, specifically 17% in the 22-23 survey. That is quite shocking. That is quite depressing, and I would ask, we've obviously circled round this point, but I suppose I'd like a response to that and how we've been working on that beyond what's already been mentioned here today. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're actively working with our union colleagues, to train union members to find out the reasons for the dissatisfaction and taking their issues on board through those staff networks, through the Equality Allies. It is shocking. Again, the EDI toolkit development is part of the response to that, so that we can better support not only managers but the staff as a whole. So and working, I failed to mention, again, with the well-being and the EDI, we work very much closely with the ICS, in partnership with the ICS, so that because of resources, we can find out best practice, and we get support from the ICS to make sure that we have a best practice or an inclusive model across the system, the Frimley system. So it's working in partnership with that and strengthening that. Last month, for example, we just we had an EDI conference, which was very, very popular with staff, not just within Bracknell Forest, and there's webinars and etc. and resources being made available across the system, which we're tapping into. The anti-racism charter adoption is part of that response in addressing the 17% dissatisfaction. I'm sorry, getting tongue-tied. to addressing the dissatisfaction. Sorry, yeah, sorry, my God, dry lips. Yeah, going forward. So yeah, we're doing quite a lot. Well, we're attempting to address some of the issues, and again, listening to understand and aligning with our values. We very much want to be an inclusive organisation, not just paying lip service to it, but we are, we have developed, for example, we did some training for managers around leading a culture of well-being and psychological safety, for example. That is to address some of that. So there's a proportion, around 60% of managers have gone through that development. And we'll continue to funding permitting, we'll continue to see if we can embed that. We're currently looking at providing training not only on the e-learning, we've got a range of e-learning modules, but we're also trying to develop an in-house EDI face-to-face program that we incorporate cultural humility, cultural competence training going forward. Yeah, so we are kind of listening, trying to listen and make sure, especially through the framework again, making sure that behaviors, manager behaviors are clear and staff are aware, which aligns to our values. Staff are aware of the kind of behaviors that we're expecting staff to role model going forward.
And as you've implied, this number doesn't reflect the great work that's taken place since 2022. When the next survey is obviously done, I would ask for that assurance that we do pay attention to how the survey can pick up on any progress that's been made since then, or should I say any trend. I mean, I would hope it would be progress, but any trend since then, and obviously gives us as a committee a chance to fully assess and understand where we need to do more. So I just ask for that assurance for the next survey.
Yeah, the next survey, we are currently conducting, we haven't conducted another survey, a big survey, but we're currently doing polls, and through the polls so that we can get real-time responses to staffing issues, working with the unison, like I said. The framework is, what happens usually with surveys is that because we're encouraging that speak up culture, there's a possibility that the numbers may go up because there's more people reporting, or there may be a possibility that that goes down. So an upward trend or in that figure could just mean that people are more confident to speaking up and challenging and reporting that mechanism. We're also looking at reporting, making sure that our reporting platforms are robust and it's easier for people to access and confidently and anonymously report any grievances that they may have.
Thank you. Sorry, did you want to come in quickly, Paul?
Yeah, just briefly. When we look at this, and it's also identifying what people have identified the reason for discrimination, and I think through the polls that we'll be doing is a greater provide us with greater evidence and information to feel if people do feel discriminated, on what grounds. Because I think just doing a general survey doesn't always pick up the intricate bit of detail that we actually need to be able to address it. And I think the live polls that Antoinette is talking about will give us a further opportunity to really try and identify what this actually looks like. And then if there are areas that we need to address, it will be easier to get that in a live poll. We haven't come to a decision whether we're actually going to do a full survey again as yet. We would normally do them every 2 or 3 years. That's on for a further discussion. But because the polls has given us such rich information, it may well be that we do start conducting more regular, up-to-date polls, looking at particular areas, and clearly where we've got information which has been a previous concern, they're the sort of areas that we would be looking to address.
Yeah, I'm working on the sort of same paragraph. It mentions that in the last survey, 76% said it's a great place to work. But what are we comparing that to? I mean, presumably the previous poll was pre-pandemic. and was it 88% or was it 62% or was it? It's getting a feel for whether it's going in the right direction would be useful. Because I personally work for an organisation that does a complete employee survey every year annually on the dot, and they probably have a team of people because there's 160,000 employees, so it's probably have a large team of people actually analysing all the data. But it's an online poll, I say done annually. So I think the idea of doing more polls is very useful. I'm not suggesting we do a complete employee experience annually, but it would be useful to see, gauge which direction things are going so that we can actually pick up if things are going in the wrong direction.
It's certainly going in the right direction. We compared it to the last, I'm trying to just pick up the figures from here. I think it was 70-something%. Yeah, it was 67% in 2017, and it's currently 77%. So it's definitely going up in the right direction.
Thank you. Any other questions? Last one from me. We obviously have talked about our internal culture a lot. Do we sometimes look to bring in third parties, a fresh set of eyes, to actually come in and offer independent advice on what we could be doing better?
So last year or 18 months ago, we had a consultant come in, an independent consultant that came in and to develop our Inclusive Conversations program specifically for our managers, but also works very much with the members in developing the model, your model of conduct program policy going forward. Yeah, so we have, and in that, in the development of that program, we had a focus group where the internal culture was assessed, and that informed the Inclusive Conversations program going forward. And the polls that we conducted recently, I conducted one 2 months ago with the managers' forums to identify what the culture is like, and that explicitly provided some positive comments, but 15 of the comments, descriptors, I would say, is less positive. So again, we're going to be looking at that to develop in our culture, using that as a platform to, hence why the manager framework is a particular useful living document tool that we were going to hoping that we can use to support the development of the culture, aligning very much with our values of being inclusive, ambitious, and always learning. So we want to be an always learning culture, so it's getting that message across. That is what is needed.
Yeah, can I just add to that? Because I think the polls have been really useful because whilst it gives us real-time information, it does also give us the opportunity to follow up where there have been areas of negativity. And what we have tried to do, and in conjunction with the Chief Executive, is just to say, right, be open and honest about this. If you're experiencing something which you're feeling isn't right, you're feeling you're being unfairly treated, we want to know about it. And what we've actually found from that is that people have come forward and spoken to myself, Alison and Antoinette following those polls. That gives us real quality information to be able to deal with some of the challenges that any organisation will actually have from time to time. So I think we've experienced some really positive outcomes from these polls, and we've been able to actually in certain situations capture things before they could potentially move forward to be a major problem, and also identifying where there's little bits of moans and groans in certain areas that we can look at addressing and try to understand them a bit more. So I think those real-time polls have been really valuable, and I know the Chief Executive is really supportive of them, and certainly for the work that we're doing within our service area, it's been really valuable. And it's quite brave for an individual in a forum where you've got over 100 people there to be. There's one thing about responding to a poll, but then actually volunteering, then to say actually it was me that made one of the negative comments. And I've got to say, I didn't expect one individual to put it in the Teams chat. And I think that just reflects the culture we've got, because people feel that they can raise these issues, and they know when they raise these issues that we'll try to address them. We're not always going to get everything right, but I think with the journey we're on, and I think it's important to note that we're on a journey, and we're always on a journey of improvement. But if people feel that they can actually raise comments in that sort of forum, with the confidence that they will be getting some support or at least a listening ear, I think it actually reflects really well on our organisation.
Last chance for any more questions? No, in that case, I move recommendations 2.1, and I don't think I could say anything better than what Paul's just said now about how this is a continuing journey. So I ask for a second.
Nick Allen, Councillor Allen, happy to second, Chair.
Thank you. Is there anything you would like to say, Councillor Allen?
No, thank you.
Anything that many of the members would like to say? No, so all those in favour of moving recommendation 2.1, please put up your hand. That is unanimous. In that case then, members, that was the final item on the agenda, so I declare this meeting closed. I would ask you to stay still until we confirm that we're offline, please.